Hey guys, some breaking news. Caleb Calhoun here with Off the Hook Sports. Had to bring this to you live because it happened shortly after Dave and I went off the show today from our weekly podcast. It came out, Pat 40 of SI.com is reporting that Tennessee is under potential NCAA investigation for NIL violations in multiple sports. According to this report, these violations could be quote unquote major. Now, I want to give full context to this. In addition to Pat 40 reporting that, other reports have come out that the NCAA has not commented to Sports Illustrated, and the university is claiming that they have received no notice of inquiry yet into their activity. So it kind of take with it what you will, but this is very, very early. I think the thing that really scares a lot of people is the operative word of major. Now, again, 40 to be fair, on Sports Illustrated cites a source that said Tennessee doesn't believe it's committed any violations in the NIL realm. That's a direct quote, and pointed to the NCAA's vague guidance in regards to NIL since its introduction into college athletics in July of 2021. Obviously, for Tennessee, this is kind of a big deal. I mean, we're talking about a program that is less than a little over 3 years now removed from firing a head coach because of major NCAA violations that occurred before NIL. They had to forfeit wins from that violation. And now we're talking about a program that is looking at that also had that actually had to settle some NIL issues last summer, in case you guys forgot, beyond just the Jeremy Pruitt scandal. So there's no denying that this could end up being serious depending on what it is. For those of you who don't remember, Florida is also under investigation for in major NIL violations. That is due to the Jaden Rashada incident. Jaden Rashada committed to Florida last year and has since transferred to Arizona State because, based on all the reporting, there was not NIL money that was promised to Rashada, and Florida wasn't able to deliver. So there have been issues like this happening throughout. Tennessee has according to On3, largest NIL collective, as we all know, which is Spire Sports. And that's reportedly the most ambitious, largest NIL collective in the country. And that's where the story of Nico Iamaleava, the $8 million man, comes into play, the quarterback for Tennessee. We don't know how much he has to do with this, if anything. I mean, I'm just speculating here. But he had reportedly gotten $8 million to go to Tennessee. There have been other NIL issues crop up within the past couple of years. Obviously, Texas A&M, their 12th man initiative, had to shut down last year, specifically due to the fact that they were in certain NIL violations. But again, we don't know what all of this is. The potential rules violations are, quote, major in nature. Here's what I'm going to say on this. And I'm going to add a little bit of context based on what the university is reporting and based on what is being reported by other sources that say Tennessee has not been in any conduct under any NIL violation. 40 himself reports Tennessee doesn't believe they've committed any NIL violation. The truth of the matter is, and it's pretty easy to speculate this part, that the NCAA has not gotten out ahead of the curve on NIL. We all agree with that. They were caught flat-footed with the Supreme Court ruling in July of 2021, and they still haven't figured out how to address it. They say it's not supposed to be used to recruit. That's vague. How do you address that? How do you enforce that? You have schools like Missouri right now, or states like Missouri, allowing coaches to use NIL to recruit high school athletes. There's nothing the NCAA can do about it. You have multiple places where schools are in direct violation, where state laws are in direct violation with NCAA rules on NIL. I bring all this up to say, guys, it could be considered major by the NCAA, and it could also be completely irrelevant because the NCAA has no real teeth at this moment, and it's almost impossible to enforce NIL when you're talking about these things. I mean, they say you're not supposed to use it to recruit. Well, what does that mean exactly? Does that mean you can't use it to recruit? Does that mean you can't use it in the transfer portal? Nobody really knows what it means when you've committed an NIL violation because the rules on NIL violations are honestly 1,000% vague. And I think Tennessee is taking its chance that, you know what, this is so vague that we're going to push the boundaries and there's nothing really the NCAA can much do. I mean, we've talked about NIL, just so you guys know. I mean, I should give you full disclosure. We have reported on NIL the same way we have reported on NIL under the assumption Tennessee is doing things that are technically illegal by the NCAA. You are not supposed to coerce athletes to make decisions based on NIL money. But Dave and I have been reporting all year that we believe Tennessee kept a lot of its athletes because of NIL money. We believe that Dante Thornton, Lance Hurd, Andre Carrick, these are people we're just naming. We believe a lot of them, I don't know about Andre Carrick, but definitely Dante Thornton and Lance Hurd, ended up at Tennessee because of NIL money. Again, technically that's a violation. So would I sit there and say that I don't think Tennessee committed any violation? No. I think it's very possible they committed violations based on what, well, put it this way. I think it's very possible they committed violations based on what the intent of the violations are to be by the NCAA. But the NCAA has not properly or appropriately written out how violations should be addressed. And because of that reason, quite honestly, I think it's safe to say that the NCAA doesn't have much teeth here. I mean, I think that's where we're at. And this is honestly, if they even try to come down on them, this is just another step that would take to maybe them losing total power. And look, what I just said about Tennessee, there's a whole story. I'm working on it now on how Jim Harbaugh rebuilt Michigan. It's going to be a history video that's going to come out later this week. Michigan openly opened their NIL checkbook last year to keep all their players that were already on the team because they realized the experience of having those players come back would outweigh the talent on other schools. And you saw that when they beat Alabama, the experience outweighed it. Tennessee's kind of making the same leap of faith this year with returning their athletes. The truth of the matter is, what Tennessee is doing is probably what a lot of schools are doing. Again, total speculation on my end. But my guess is that Tennessee is violating the intent of NCAA NIL laws, but there's nothing they can do to get in trouble by the book because there are so many loopholes that are so gigantic. I mean, the most inaccurate quarterback in Tennessee history could thread the needle of these loopholes. Okay. So JJ Lambone's Cloudy Productions, The Mafia Story says probably we can take these violations to court and win. UT can. Yeah, that I would probably agree. Now, that's the whole thing is one of the reasons that I think the NCAA will back down is they don't want a lot of these things to end up in court. I think they can. I quite honestly think that if things ended up in court, that's how the NCAA loses its power. They're already losing their power because NIL ended up in court to begin with, and they fought against it. Then Fred Stryker says, if Tennessee cheated on purpose, then take the punishment, but seems like the NCAA is destroying itself. Fred, depends on what the punishment is. I have to be honest with you. I don't think Tennessee wants to take the punishment if it means postseason bans, and this is where I say I think they are pretty much taking the risk that the NCAA doesn't have a lot of teeth on this. And so, but you are right, the NCAA is destroying itself. The NCAA doesn't have a lot of options, guys. For those who don't know, before the age of NIL, which was just 2021, the NCAA was super backlogged on investigations to begin with. That's why everybody was cheating. Your team was cheating if they were winning at a high level. Sorry, they were. The reason I bring that up is because they already had their hands tied totally. Their compliance department could not keep up with everything that was going on. That's how Auburn could just, the evidence be so obvious that they opened the checkbook to get Cam Newton to go there over Mississippi State. It's confirmed that Mississippi State offered them money and neither school got in trouble because it's just so, it's harder to prove things in court than it is to prove things in an NCAA investigation. And their hands got even more tied once NIL came aboard. So quite honestly, there's a lot to look into this with the NCAA and with Tennessee, but my gut feeling, they did violate an intended NIL collective by Tennessee. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they actually violated it on the letter of the law. And think about what Pat Forty wrote. And by the way, I'm not going to get into it today, but we know that Pat Forty has not been known as the biggest fan of Tennessee over the past few years. Okay. He's been at odds with the Tennessee fan base. We'll just leave it at that. He writes that the report is quote unquote major, or that he's been told that a source says that these violations are quote unquote major, these alleged violations. But he also acknowledges that Tennessee is insisting they've done nothing wrong. And it's also public knowledge that the NCAA hasn't notified Tennessee of anything. So they're just looking into something. Guys, they're looking into everybody now. Michigan just had Jim Harbaugh get suspended for 2 separate incidents over the course of a season. So he's missed half the season due to suspensions, one for a recruiting violation and the other for a sign stealing scandal. And guys, I'm going to tell you something. They're going to keep that national championship. They ain't forfeiting that. There's not much the NCAA can do. So where I'm at with it is that this is just, the details are so scarce, and the NCAA has such little teeth that, quite honestly, I don't think there's much they can do. You guys, please hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell, turn your notifications on, tell a friend about what we're doing. This is, again, things like this are why we love Off the Hook Sports. I love being able to go live to talk to you guys directly when breaking news happens. We did this with Nick Saban's retirement. We did this when Cooper Mays announced he was going back. So I really, really, really appreciate all of you guys who are in the chat room and message boards now. Again, please tell me what you think. I appreciate you guys all for being on here. Just wanted to break down a little bit how, for those who are just joining, we're talking about Tennessee is under investigation. Excuse me. The NCAA is looking into Tennessee for a potential NIL violation. The word was quote unquote major. However, it is straight up acknowledged that details are scarce in what they're facing. The school acknowledged the investigation, but said that they have not received any notice of allegations from the NCAA enforcement staff. And most importantly, the school is openly denying anything about NIL. So quite honestly, what are we talking about here? This is kind of the big story on this. It's really hard to say that there's anything going on wrong with Tennessee right now. And it's really hard to say that if something is going wrong, that Tennessee could get in any serious trouble. Again, there's a lot of vague issues. And I want to get into the political side of this from Tennessee itself. Tennessee, and you guys can't, guys, I'm sorry. The NCAA is going to look into this. Tennessee has the most exciting offense in college football in Josh Heupel. They have arguably the most exciting quarterback heading to Knoxville to take over in Nico Iamaleava this year. I'm just going to tell you guys, Tennessee is going to be the most marketable team in college football over the next couple of years. The NCAA will look the other way to try to protect Tennessee if they can help it because of that. I'm just going to be honest. There is way too much at stake for Nico and Josh Heupel being that entertaining of an offense. And college football is a TV show. College athletics is a TV show. So that's just something we're going to have to look into. Now, yes, it does span across multiple sports. Could this mean baseball? Tony Vitello has notoriously gotten in trouble with the SEC for certain rules. Could it be something with that? I seriously doubt it's the Lady Vols. Kelly Harper is not recruiting well for next year as it is. If it is, that's kind of embarrassing, guys. Rick Barnes, you could see it. But Rick Barnes operated more out of the transfer portal this year. It's hard to see if they were using the money to actually out-recruit people. But this is the real story. If Tennessee was using the NIL collective, they've got good sports programs, but largely because of their experience in transfer players, not because they raked in top 5 classes on the recruiting trail. And so what you're going to have to pay attention to is, what was this being used for? Again, my guess is that they were using NIL money to coerce people to commit or stay, which is technically an NCAA violation. But there are so many loopholes. There's so many aspects of NIL that are in blatant contradiction to NCAA rules across state by state. And this is why Congress wanted to address it. But there's no way Congress can address it without just putting more money from the athletes back into their hands. So I'm just going to say that I don't think there is much here that the NCAA will be able to get anything out of. Danny White is the absolute best at raising money. He knows what he's doing. The school got out in front of it. And the school, like I told you, the quotes, the school straight up said NCAA NIL rules are vague, and so they don't believe they violated any. They're just calling the NCAA out, guys. I mean, literally, Tennessee is calling the NCAA out and saying, you guys don't really have any teeth with these rules, so we're going to do what we want to do, and there's not anything you guys can legally do with this. That's where I think Tennessee is, and that's where I think the NCAA is with NIL, because I just don't see any possible way anybody could think that the SEC or the NCAA is going to be able to come down on anybody in an age of NIL. So again, these are the first report. I just want to give you guys who reported each. The first report is Pat Forty, who said that the NCAA is looking into potential NIL investigations and maybe investigating Tennessee, but Tennessee has acknowledged the notice. Tennessee acknowledged that the NCAA is looking into them, but they said they received no notice of allegations, that the details are scarce, and they are directly denying any NIL violations. And then, according to Trey Wallace, who is a college sports writer for Outkick and Fox, NCAA is looking into Tennessee athletics for possible NIL infractions and latest attempt to show the schools they are in control. Is Trey Wallace's report. I'm not going to go there either. I don't know which way it is. I think this is possibly a violation of a law that the NCAA intended to be ironclad, but is not. So that's where this is at this point. There is so much evidence with other schools that there's a ton of evidence with other schools that it's really, really, really hard for the NCAA to actually close a deal on any NIL investigations. And it's going to be hard to see if they can close a deal on this. Tennessee has been ahead of the curve. They were prepared for their NIL collective right when the Supreme Court ruling hit. Danny White has been all on top of this. And quite honestly, the only way Tennessee gets punished is if the NCAA is just on a mission to prove that they still have power, and then they hand down some unfair punishment, at which point there could be legal action from the Tennessee side if that happens. Again, that is way down the road. But I'm just trying to make sense of the current NIL investigation now. Obviously, on our show Wednesday morning, we usually have Jimmy Hyams on. He'd be able to break down a lot more than we would. He could be tied into this more than most. But the truth of the matter is, it's really hard to think that anything's going to come of this, given the letter of the law and the vague nature of how NCAA rules are written in an NIL age. The real question is, will any of that matter if the NCAA wants to send a message and they have enough evidence to send that message? And if they do want to send that message, can Tennessee take any legal action in court? And so these are where the real questions come aboard. And according to 247 Sports now, let's more coverage of this. This is breaking as we're talking, but the case actually is centered around Nico Iamaleava. 247 Sports reports that it is centered around Nico Iamaleava, which is an even bigger deal. We don't know exactly what the situation is, but we do know that it reportedly centers around Nico Iamaleava. Look, it was reported that Nico Iamaleava got $8 million. I believed it. We knew that Josh Heupel and Tennessee put all their eggs in the Nico basket. They were high on him from the start. This was the guy to build Tennessee football's program under Josh Heupel. He put everything into Nico. So I would say that if it does involve Nico, the next question becomes, why now? Nico committed to Tennessee, guys, in the summer of 2022. Why would the NCAA be looking into it now? The report from The Athletic on Nico making $8 million broke in the summer of 2022. Tennessee was already under investigation by the NCAA for the Jeremy Pruitt scandal during that time. And by the way, they were under investigation for level 1 NIL violations too, both of which have been wrapped up. But you don't know when the NCAA was investigating them for both of those things? They just looked the other way when the Nico Iamaleava reported deal in The Athletic happened for $8 million? Please. If you're asking me, and I don't want to assuage Tennessee fans because it's very possible the NCAA just wants to show teeth. But if you're asking me, I think that the most likely scenario is the NCAA has a letter of the law that Tennessee violated. They want to flex some muscles to show the letter of the law is violated. To show the intent of the law is violated, but they won't be able to prove it was technically violated because NIL rules are just too vague. That's just a fact. Okay, there's no way around this. NIL rules are way too vague. And again, this doesn't make sense to me largely because Nico Iamaleava, in case you forget, and I want to repeat this, it is January of 2024. The report of Nico getting $8 million in The Athletic came out in July of 2022 when he committed to Tennessee. Why is this just coming up now? It came out when Tennessee was under two other investigations from the NCAA. Do the compliance departments not talk? So again, this is one of the weirdest things that just doesn't make sense. Now, again, this is not comparable to the Florida situation for those who want to say it's like Florida. Florida got caught because Jaden Rashada, it's very confirmed that he went to he went to Florida on the promise of NIL money and was rejected that. They couldn't finish they couldn't close the deal, so he went somewhere else. Tennessee is totally different. totally different. So in case you're just joining us again, please hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell, turn the notifications on. Don't forget to tune into our daily Off the Hook Sports show every Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Dave Hooker and myself. In case you're just wondering, in case you're just tuning in, the NCAA is looking into potential NIL violations by the Vols, but Tennessee's received no notice of allegations. This is according to Pat Forty of SI. Details are scarce, and most importantly, Tennessee is denying anything that's happening on the concept of on the grounds that NIL writing is just too vague. So we're going to see what happens. We'll talk about more of this tomorrow. Thank you guys all for tuning in. This was just a little quick rundown I wanted to give you of what's happening. It does center around Nico Iamaleava. All I would say is don't worry yet. You're going to see a lot more of these in the future, but it's unlikely the NCAA can get anything out of it. So thanks again for tuning in, guys. Again, don't forget to tune in tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern and every weekday at 10 a.m. Eastern for our daily podcast. With Off the Hook Sports, this is